Welcome to Good Morning Transfers. We start with some breaking news, and that is that Manchester City and Atletico Madrid have agreed a deal for Julian Alvarez for up to £81 million. Talks have been progressing well between the clubs over the last 24 hours. Atletico will pay £64 million up front, with a further £17 million of potential add-ons. That'll be a record sale for City, and it represents a huge profit on the £14 million they paid River Plate for the Argentine forward back in January 2022. Personal terms still have to be agreed, although they are not expected to be a problem. A warm welcome to Dan, Sam and Kwaku. I mean, we start with some breaking news, Dan. Julian Alvarez now on his way to Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a way to start the show. I mean, this is going to be undoubtedly one of the signings of the window in Europe, I think. And, you know, we've been talking about Julian Alvarez over the last few weeks, whether this signing could happen, would it happen? And it's very interesting when we've seen, you know, him go to the Olympics. Pep Guardiola has been quite, coy, I think, when we've heard him talk about, and we've heard Guardiola talk about, Kevin De Bruyne and talk about how important he is to his future plans, whereas Alvarez has felt somewhat different. I think the interesting thing with Alvarez is, a few weeks ago it seemed that he felt he wasn't playing in the big games last season. And I think we saw that a little bit. He didn't start in the FA Cup final, the Champions League quarterfinals, and he didn't play in the last 4 games of the Premier League season in terms of starting as well. So hopefully this move, if it happens, when it happens, he'll feel like he'll be one of the star men at Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone.
Right, let's head straight to the Etihad then, where our reporter Ben Ransom is. Ben, we're just getting this story reaching us now. Julian Alvarez off to Atletico Madrid. Can you just recap for us what we now know?
Yes, well, we know that talks have been ongoing between the two clubs, and in the last 24 hours they were certainly moving in the right direction. Well, that has moved again significantly this morning. You're absolutely spot on in what you've been saying. That fee now agreed, and it would be a record sale for Manchester City. And to put that in some sort of context, remember, they signed this player, Julian Alvarez, for £14 million. Essentially, when they were talking to Atletico Madrid, they said that they wanted at least 5 times what they paid for him if he was to move in this transfer window. Well, Atletico Madrid clearly have designated this is the player they want to build their future around. 24 years old, he's won every single major honour in the game, which is quite remarkable, both domestically here in England, but also the Copa America and indeed the World Cup with Argentina as well. £81 million this total deal will be worth. That's €95 million. That means £64 million paid up front. That's €75 million plus potential further add-ons of £17 million. So it is a quite remarkable sale for Manchester City, and yet more success. I mean, it's credit to the club, isn't it? It's credit to their scouting department. Remember when he came in, there was a lot of excitement, but Dan was absolutely right in what he was saying. This is a player who, while he played almost as many minutes as anyone in the City squad over the last year, I think he felt that he was being slightly sidelined in the most important matches. If you look back at the end of the season, for example, he didn't start the FA Cup final. He didn't start any of the final 4 Premier League matches as City were in that really close tussle with Arsenal to try and lift the trophy. And indeed, he didn't start either of the Champions League quarter-final legs against Real Madrid. So perhaps in his mind, as he went away for the summer, went away for the Copa America and indeed the Olympics, Julian Alvarez was just thinking how pivotal he was always going to be when you've got someone like Erling Haaland in front of you in that pecking order. Well, Pep Guardiola, Manchester City, they don't like to keep unhappy players. They've always said if the right offer comes in, they will allow players to leave who don't want to be here anymore. Well, the right offer has come in. That deal then has been agreed financially. The structures have been agreed. It's now up to the player to finalise personal terms.
Ben, you've mentioned there how much of a brilliant deal it is financially for Manchester City. I mean, they've, got such a huge profit on what they paid for him, but it's a transfer that works for both Julian Alvarez and Manchester City right now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, as I was intimating there, City don't keep players here who don't want to be here, provided the offer's right. I mean, there have been countless examples of players who have perhaps had their head turned slightly, been tempted by moves, but the money's never been put up. But in this case, clearly Atletico Madrid were in the market for a forward, for a striker, and they've seen Alvarez as the man they want to build their team around. And for Alvarez, it means he gets to go to a Spanish-speaking country, which obviously will be fantastic and make it a little bit easier for him to settle potentially. But also with that kind of fee, £81 million total fee, that's the sort of fee that is very much a statement of intent, is that you are going to be our main man. So I think that'll be hugely tempting for him as well, and he'll get to effectively get out of Erling Haaland's shadow and go and be the main man at another huge club and challenge for more honours. So from City's point of view, yeah, look, I mean, you can't, the profit's huge. It's a record sale for them. This is a club that does sell really, really well, doesn't it? So I suppose the question now remains is whether or not they deem it necessary to bring someone in to replace him.
Ben obviously goes over to Atletico Madrid, which means he can leave the miserable rain in Manchester and he can go and enjoy the sunshine over there. You mentioned Pep Guardiola, and he doesn't mind if players don't want to play for him, and he won't keep them. But how much of a blow do you think it will be, given how much he values him, perhaps values him, to not sell him to another Premier League club?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because he's certainly settled really well. I mean, I mentioned there that he's played almost as many minutes as anyone. I think it's only Rodri, Ederson, Phil Foden and Kyle Walker that played more minutes for Manchester City than Julian Alvarez last season. So he was clearly very integral. But I think it's exactly that. I think it's just in the biggest games, he wasn't quite yet at the level where Pep felt he was first choice when everyone was fit, when De Bruyne's there, when Haaland's there. So I think from their point of view, I think he's been hugely important. I think it's 36 goals he's scored across 103 appearances across those 2 seasons. And certainly an exciting player. When he came off the bench, he often had an impact. He's a very, very talented player, and you don't win World Cups and Copa Americas without being that. And I suppose from City's point of view, from Pep's point of view now, they've got a week or two till the start of the season. They've got to look at the squad, the shape of the squad, and just ascertain whether they feel they've got enough in that attacking department. They've been obviously linked with other players. I mean, rewind to the start of the summer, and potentially an attacking midfielder, a forward, a wide player, someone in that ilk was on their potential shopping list. It has been for a couple of seasons. You just wonder whether this money particularly might just tempt them into the market, because the last thing Pep Guardiola will want to do is go into the Premier League season feeling short, because City have been the team to beat, but Pep has also relied on all of his players. The fact that Alvarez wants to leave because he wants to play and start more big matches and yet has played almost as many minutes as anyone tells you how well Pep manages to use his squad. So he will need every single one of those bodies if he's to keep off and fend off the challenges of the likes of Arsenal over the next, 9-12 months.
Yeah. It will be really interesting, won't it, for Pep Guardiola to see whether Pep Guardiola will replace Julian Alvarez in that position. Just finally, the last few weeks, there was a lot of speculation around Ederson and Kevin De Bruyne's future. What do you think? Do you think both of them will be staying at the Etihad this summer?
I think that's going to happen now. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like certainly. I mean, I wasn't away with City on their US tour, but everything that Pep Guardiola said in and around those matches while they were away suggested that both Ederson and Kevin De Bruyne would be staying. There's even been suggestions in the last week or so that maybe Ederson might be rewarded with a new contract to make him feel like he really is truly the number one here. He's been such an important player for Pep as they've won this record 4 Premier League titles in the row, as they won the Champions League as well. So obviously, it looks as though he'll stay. It looks as though Kevin De Bruyne will stay as well. Again, Pep Guardiola was quite clear they hadn't actually received an offer from Saudi Arabia, despite all the reports linking Kevin De Bruyne with a move out there as well. So it looks like both will be staying. And I suppose in De Bruyne's case, it makes it even more important that he does stay now, because certainly when he was injured for a large part of last season, it was Julian Alvarez who played in that, in inverted commas, De Bruyne role. Well, with De Bruyne being fit, they'll need him, especially now it appears as though Alvarez is going to be leaving.